Hi, this is Julie Benz from Dexter, Saw 5, Buffy and Angel, and you're listening to Don't Go Out There.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Don't Go Out There podcast. We appreciate everyone listening. We at the Don't Go Out There podcast are very excited for our guest today. We are ecstatic to have an actor with over 100 credits to her name, spanning nearly 4 decades, probably known best for her role as Rita Bennett and, spoiler, Rita Morgan, as well in the series Dexter. Also known for Breaking Hearts in Angel and Desperate Housewives, and Britt in Saw 5, one of my personal favorites, just to name a few. Another legend of the business, Miss Julie Benz. Julie, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I didn't realize I had over 100 credits.
You've been busy, you've been working.
I've been working. I've been busy. I've never added them all up.
Julie, just to get this interview kicked off, we always like to ask all of our guests, what is it that got you into acting?
Well, so I was a competitive figure skater when I was a child, and I had a bad injury when I was 13 years old. And my mom didn't want me to sitting around moping around the house, so it was her idea that I auditioned for this local community theater play, and I got the role. And then she had another great idea where she took me down to a modeling agency and thought I could do like commercials and stuff. And so then through that modeling agency, I met my manager who was ended up being my manager for 30 years until he retired. And yeah, so
Oh,
I think
wow.
for me it was the love of performing. Like I grew up performing as an ice skater, and so then I just transferred that to acting.
Awesome. I love
Awesome.
that. We spoke of your 100 plus credits. You have such a mixture of TV and film on your resume. Do you have a preference of what you like to do more, TV or film?
I just like playing interesting characters. So it doesn't, the medium itself doesn't matter to me. Although I do love the television life. Like I do love working in TV because you get to play a character for a longer period of time, and you get to kind of peel away the layers of the character as you're working on it and see the character grow and evolve. Whereas a film, if you're lucky, like when I did Rambo, that was maybe 3.5 months shooting. But some of my other movies, like I did this little indie film called The Circle, which a lot of people have discovered. That was a 10-day shoot. Jawbreaker, I think, was 5 weeks. So it's just I do enjoy playing a character for a long extended period of time, and I enjoy the family that's created on set as well.
Awesome. So your first major role was as Marcy Fox in Jawbreaker. That had to be exciting to land a huge role at that point in your career and get to work with such a stellar cast. I mean, everyone from Rose McGowan, uh, Rebecca Gayheart, Tatiana Ali, Pam Grier, and even Marilyn Manson was in that movie. And if I'm not mistaken, you recently had a Jawbreaker reunion, right? Can you tell us a little bit
We
about that experience?
Yeah, we were honored at the Academy Museum here in Los Angeles for the 25th anniversary of Jawbreaker, and they actually are putting some props from the movie into the museum, which is very exciting for us.
Awesome.
At the time when I got cast in that film, I mean, I I was in awe of Rose McGowan. I mean, she's just like this incredible creature, beautiful and just incredible. And Rebecca Gayheart, probably one of the most beautiful women on the planet. So, I felt like the short fat potato next to everybody. Um, but we had so much fun filming that movie. We were all in our 20s playing high school, and I think out of the whole cast, I was the only one that I had the most normal high school experience out of everybody. So it was a lot of fun, and like shooting the prom scenes were my favorite. I love the prom.
That's awesome. So I know you're probably sick to death of answering Dexter questions, but we
Oh
just have to
yeah,
pick your brain a little bit about a few things, if that's okay.
that's
So,
fine.
tell us how the role of Rita came to be and how did you land that character?
So I originally auditioned for the role of Rita and Deb because they didn't know what direction they were going in. So I read for the casting assistant for both roles, and she's like, "Oh, I think you're good for both. So then I read for the casting director for both. And again, it was like, oh, you're right for both. And so then I went and read for Jim Manos, our producer at the time. And as soon as I walked in the door, he was like, "Oh my God, you're our Rita." And I was like, "No, but I can be Deb too," because I really wanted to swear on television. I really thought I was Deb. He's like, "No, you're our Rita," and I'm like, "Well, I prepared Deb too. Let me do that as well." Um, and the interesting thing as an actor was when I was working on the material for Deb, like I had to change the way I walk, the way I talk, how I like all my natural instincts I had to like change. Whereas with Rita, I just had to be. I didn't have to change anything. And it was an important lesson for me to learn as an actor because it I was not a Deb. Like it was visible to everybody else. I was not a Deb except to me. I thought because I was working so hard to try to be a Deb that I was a Deb, but I wasn't. I was definitely a Rita. And then I had to test twice for it because the first time I tested for it, the network thought I was too glamorous to play Rita. So the note was like, "Can you come back in and test and wear no makeup and don't do your hair and just don't do anything." So I was like, "Sure." And so I took it one step further. And the night before, I drank a bottle of red wine so my eyes would be really puffy and swollen. And I put my hair was really blonde at the time, so I put mascara in my roots so it would look really dark and kind of scrungy. And then I wore like unmatching like sweats. Like I put together like the ugliest outfit I could possibly put together. And I went to sign in to test, and I signed in and I was sitting there and I see everybody come out and they're like looking around the room and they look right over me. And then they look at the sign in sheet and I hear them go, "Well, she signed in, but where is she?" And I was like, "Are you looking for me?" And then the director, who the director turned and looked at me and he's like, "Oh my God, are you wearing a prosthetic? You look so different." And I was like, "No, this is just me. You said no makeup. I have absolutely no makeup on." And because I drank a bottle of red wine the night before, I was a little hungover. So then I went in and tested with Michael again, and basically they gave me the part on the spot at that point. So
That's awesome. That's commitment.
yeah.
So, was there ever a time, whether it was reading the scripts or during filming, that you realized, okay, wow, we are doing something that's special here and that may stand the test of time?
Well, I saw it from the very beginning, which is why I jumped through so many hoops to audition for it. I loved the script from the first moment I read it. I was like, this is the type of show I like to watch. So this is the type of show I want to be on. And I remember telling Michael during shooting the pilot, like I was like, this show's gonna be huge. This is gonna be huge. This is gonna be a huge hit. He was like, "How do you know? Like, are you sure you think?" And I'm like, 1,000% yes, because this is the type of programming I like to watch. And I love watching TV. Like I love consuming content and watching television shows. And I'm like, this is it. Like this is it. So I feel like I knew way before everybody else did.
Well, it's certainly one of my favorites. Um, Tell us about the development of Rita. Like, we saw her go from this timid, damaged person and really grow to become one of the strongest characters on the show.
Yeah, so in the beginning, I played Rita because she had been a victim of domestic violence and a lifelong victim of abuse. I did a lot of research into that, and I made the choice to every time she talks, it's almost like she's apologizing. It's almost she's ready to say I'm sorry immediately right after. And then I also kind of use the imagery of a very damaged bird, like a tiny little bird that's like missing a wing. And so that's kind of how I developed her. And then I worked with the wardrobe department. I was like, I don't want any of her clothes. Like her clothes need to look like they come from thrift stores, and that nothing matches. Like it's it's nothing attractive really. And then we went for the whole, no, I mean, I wore not a stitch of makeup in season one. It was no makeup, no hair. So it was great for me because after coming off of, Buffy and Angel, where I wore a ton of makeup, even if I was dying, I was now on a show where I could show up like a guy and show up. My call time was like the same time as if I was a male actor, which was for rehearsal, not like an hour before to go through the work. And however I looked that day was how I went on camera. So it was just like, and I remember everybody going, "Oh, you're so brave. You're so brave to be so raw on camera." And I'm like, I mean, what's brave? I mean, I don't think I look that bad. This is how I look when I wake up in the morning. Like, what are you guys saying?
Yeah,
There's nothing brave about it.
that's a little bit rude.
Yeah, I was like, this is what I look like. Um, so I will say this though, because prior to Dexter, I used to be able to like not get recognized if I ran around town with no makeup on. So that was always like my disguise. And then as soon as Dexter hit, now everybody knew what I looked like without makeup on. So it's like, oh, can't hide anymore.
That's awesome. All right, last question. I promise we'll shut up about Dexter.
Oh,
What was
it's okay.
what was it like learning that you were being killed off the show? And not to, put any of the writers down or anything, but if you had the opportunity to do something different with that, would you have?
I mean, 100% yes. I was devastated. I always say nobody was more shocked and devastated than I was. I only found out the day before they gave us the script for that episode,
Ouch.
and I was absolutely devastated. I didn't see it coming. My first reaction in the room when they told me was, "Oh my God, I just lost my job," and then my second reaction was, who's going to raise the baby? Who's going to raise Harrison? Like,
Right.
so because there's a weird synergy that happens between character and actor when you play a character for a long time. So the character's memories become my memories.
Mhm.
And it's like this weird like fusion thing that happens. And so it was like, yeah, I just lost my job. And then it's like, but what about the baby? Like,
Right.
what about Harrison? What's going to happen to Harrison? Who's going to take care of Harrison? And I even said, like, I mean, I said, like, listen, no one's going to forgive you for this. The audience isn't going to forgive you. You're killing a new mom. Like, you got 7 guys standing around doing nothing on the show. Kill one of them.
Yeah.
Don't kill Rita. Like, this is a big mistake. Probably shouldn't have said that, but no, I would have, personally, I felt that there was more story to tell with Rita and Dexter. Obviously they did not think there was. In many ways, I feel I let Rita down because I would say in season 1 and season 2, I had a very strong storyline. And then in season 3 and even season 4, it wasn't the best storyline, and I'm nothing against the writers on that. It's just that's the nature of television, of episodic television. You can't expect to have the fire storyline every season because there's other actors they have to give storylines to.
Right.
So I took a step back and just let it unfold, thinking like, oh, they'll get back to writing better stuff for Rita, right? And obviously it didn't happen. And I wish I had maybe advocated a little bit more and challenged them more to think creatively and write something more challenging, I guess. No, I don't want to say better, but something more challenging that would have inspired them to see more storytelling for them. But I didn't do that, and I learned my lesson after that it's important to advocate for your character and say, like, this is getting kind of silly. Like, I really felt Rita was, I mean, listen, I had to sing Karma Chameleon, and like I thought some of that stuff was like silly. Like it was just not fun. I mean, it wasn't season one or season two Rita. It was all of a sudden like a almost like a different character. And so I wish I had challenged them to think a little outside the box with her, because then maybe she would have eventually that her fate would have eventually happened, but there would have been more time that we could have all lived with her.
Sure.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I don't know if this will date us, but they just announced Dexter Resurrection to begin filming this January. And I don't know about everyone else, but I'm ready to see Ghost Rita pop up in New Blood. You know, we got Ghost Deb. So, hey, I'm ready to see Ghost Rita pop up. Why
I
not?
know. Well, well, so the only way I could see that happen, and I highly doubt they would even do it, is if I was Ghost Rita to Harrison. Because
Mm,
the reality is I never knew Dexter's Dark Passenger.
that's true.
Right.
So, whereas Deb did, I didn't know his dark. I was his beard. I didn't know. So I don't know if it would make sense, but it would be nice if I was able, because you got to think that. Okay, listen. Here's the deal. Rita suffered more abuse and more violence over her lifetime than Dexter or even Harrison.
Oh, yeah.
All they did was like they both just witnessed their mothers being killed. That was it. Rita actually had suffered. She had an abusive home life growing up, and then a very abusive ex-husband. So but she always had hope, and she always like believed in love and had hope for people and believed the good in people. That I would think that maybe, just maybe, it would be nice to see Rita pop up as the good
Yeah.
angel for Harrison, but I doubt that's going to happen.
Well,
Fingers crossed.
Julie, I really appreciate your admiration for that character. It was an honor to hear you talk about that. But we are going to transition a little bit. You are also part of another series that's beloved and transcended the horror genre, Buffy the Vampire Slayer and the spinoff Angel. Do you have any fun stories you can share about your experience on those shows?
Oh, it was such a great show to be a part of. Especially once I was on Angel. I mean, on Buffy, I did a handful of episodes before the show even aired, and Darla started as Vampire Girl number one. Like I was supposed to die in the pilot, and then like they came to me and they're like, "Wait a second, we're gonna bring you back for the next episode." And I was like, "Cool, fun, I'll get another paycheck. That's awesome." And then they evolved Vampire Girl number one into Darla, and then created the love triangle with Angel, and then obviously I poofed, I died. But when they brought me back onto Angel, we got to explore more of Darla's life and her past and her present, and it was, for me, I always related to like going to graduate school for acting, because it was a very I was challenged on so many different levels. I was challenged as an actor. I was challenged physically, like I had to ride a horse through fire. I had to be buried alive. I was set on fire and had to be like, doused with water. I had to sing. So there were all these wonderful challenges on top of the acting that I had to do. So it was really an amazing experience for me, and taught me a lot about acting. Even though I had gone to school for acting, I think I learned more on the set of Buffy and Angel than I did in acting school. Sorry, NYU. But 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 yeah, so it was a really amazing, fun experience. And I do remember one night on set, I was filming. The flashback scenes were always my favorite, and I was filming a flashback scene, and I think it was for one of the crossover episodes between Angel and Buffy, and it was between me, David, and James Marsters, who played Spike, and we were shooting on the back lot of Universal in the middle of the night, and we were all dressed up in our flashback costumes. And I remember doing the scene, and I said my line, and I walked off, and I stood there by camera waiting to watch the rest of the scene play out. And David and James were just staring at me, and I was like, "What?" And they're like, "You have more lines." I was like, "Oh my god, I totally forgot." Like, I just thought the scene was over. But we were working really long hours, and I was exhausted. And everybody started laughing because it was so not like me to do that. And they like walk back on set and be like, "Okay, let's finish this scene. I'm so sorry, guys."
So I recently started rewatching The King of Queens. It's a classic show. I love it. I got to season 2 and I saw a familiar face that I didn't even realize was in the show until this rewatch. It was you. How was it
Yes.
working on that show? That's such a I love that show.
So I originally tested to play Leah Remini's sister on that show. Remember in season 1
Yep.
she had a sister?
Mhm.
So I tested like twice for that, and at the end of the day, the head of CBS was like, "There's no way the two of you came out of the same body. We did. It was not believable that Leah and I would be sisters." Um, so then, and by the way, it's the only job I didn't get where the writers and producers sent me flowers as a thank you, because they put me through the ringer on the auditions,
Oh,
and they sent me flowers as a thank you, and they said, "We're gonna write something for you, don't worry." So then they wrote that part specifically for me.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was I started in sitcoms, and um that's always been like my dream job, is to be on a sitcom. And I think that was one of the last sitcoms I did, because after that, people in Hollywood forgot I was funny. Um, so, uh, but it was so much fun to work with Kevin and Leah and everybody, and that uniform was awful. I feel for female FedEx agents or UPS agents, because no one looks good in that thing. But but it was a lot of fun. And they described my ass as a peach, which I was very happy for, because they didn't
nice.
say I had the ass of a prune or the ass of a cantaloupe, or peach was perfect. I was like, "Oh, that's nice."
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love that show. And speaking of things that I love, and listen, you're a legend. You've worked with some legends, been a part of some great projects, including my favorite entry in the Rambo franchise, 2008's Rambo. What was that experience like? How was it working alongside Sylvester Stallone? Was that shot on location?
So that was absolutely incredible. Um, Turned out Stallone was a big Dexter fan. And so I went into what I thought was to audition for him. And really, it turned into him pitching me why I need to be in his movie. And I was kind of sitting there. I remember I had my resume, I had my headshot and resume, and I was just like, and I was like, do you want this? And he was like, "No, I know." And he spent the whole meeting like telling me why I needed to do his movie, and I was already in my head going like, "I'm gonna do it, like I'm doing it," but I didn't tell him
Absolutely.
that. So we shot in Thailand, in the north of Chiang Mai, in the jungles of Thailand.
Wow.
We were there for about 3 months. It was absolutely incredible. So he wrote it, directed it, and starred in, and to have somebody do all three of those things
Mm.
in a movie of that size, like an action film like that, is pretty much unheard of. I think Mel Gibson did it for Braveheart, but I really don't know any other. I
Right.
mean, I'm sure there might be one or two others, but it's really unheard of for an actor to direct, write, produce, and star in an action film, because it's a lot of work.
Mhm.
He had 7 cameras running at a time. I'd never
Wow.
seen anything like that before. We shot on film, not digital. It was all film, and it was incredible. I mean, it was hard. I smelled so bad, like every day. And you'd get to work clean, part of makeup was to put dirt all over you, and then we were shooting in like 100-degree full humidity in the jungles, and taking malaria pills and making sure we didn't get
Oof.
sick, and it was tough. And at one point, like filming all those action sequences, Stallone came to me and he said, it makes for a richer film if it's your face hitting the dirt. And I said, okay. I said, I will try everything once.
Right.
And then if I feel like I can't do it, they had my stunt double there to do it. And there was only one stunt that really freaked me out. I mean, they all freaked me out, but one, well, there was a couple times where like I'd be waiting for the cameras to roll for a stunt, and I'd be like so scared, like I'd be crying because I'd be like, I'm so terrified, because you can't practice these stunts. Like they're like, you're gonna run down this hill and you're gonna run through this building and it's gonna explode, and if your hair catches on fire, we've got 2 stunt guys down there with hoses, and just run towards them and they'll put the fire out. And all I could think about was like, my hair's gonna catch on fire.
Wow.
Like, I don't want my hair to catch on fire. So I would be like standing behind a tree, like, and the makeup artist would be like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody. I'm gonna do it." I have never run so fast in my entire life. It was like a bat out of hell, just running, and I just kept running, and nothing happened, thank God. But there was one stunt where we were shooting in the rice paddies, and it's when the Burmese soldiers capture me.
Yeah.
And it was my idea. I had this great idea. I got yelled at for this, by the way. This great idea. I said, what if they grab me and then they shove me under the in the rice paddy water, and they pull me up and they shove me back under, and they pull me up and they shove me back under, and then they drag me out. Like I was into like being tough, because being the only girl in the movie, I wanted to like out stunt the guys.
Yeah.
Like my competitive nature. So we went to shoot it, and I was fine on the first take. But what we did was we just kept cameras rolling, and we did a bunch of takes just back to back. And I would say around like the third take, I snapped. Like I literally started freaking out. I thought I was going to die. I went into full on, like, I mean, I was hitting these guys, these poor actors. I was hitting them and screaming and having a complete breakdown. And I think that's the take they ended up using. But what happened was afterwards, they yelled cut because they realized a switch had flipped in my head, thinking it was real. And I was a mess. Like I couldn't stop crying. I was hyperventilating. I was like, and Stallone came over to me, and he was upset, and rightly so, because he's like, here's the deal. Don't ever suggest something that you can't do take after take. And I was like, I hear you. You're right. I am so sorry. But they ended up using that take. So, but he had a point, which was, and here's the thing, I'm afraid of water. I don't really swim. Like, you know what I mean? Like I was just trying to be a tough girl. And yeah, but I learned my lesson on that one. Don't suggest something that you can't do take after take after take. So
that's an incredible story.
But he was so great to work with. I mean, he was so great to work with, and just he's an incredible director. And I spent every moment I could on set at Video Village watching how he was directing, and just in awe of, I think Graham McTavish and I, like, we never went back to our trailers. We just stayed on set and like soaked everything up, because we were just like, this is a once in a lifetime experience. Like this is crazy.
That's incredible.
It is. Wow. I'm super excited for this. I've not gotten to personally talk to anybody on our show who's been in a Saw movie. It's my favorite horror franchise. We're all huge fans of the Saw franchise, and you, of course, starred in Saw 5. You obviously survived all of your tests because you're great. You had to watch a woman get her head cut off. You watched a guy get blown up with bombs. You stabbed Megan Good in the neck, and then you cut your hand in half. What was it like working on that project?
I was terrified the whole time.
Oh my gosh.
So the story behind the Saw franchise is when I was shooting years prior, I was shooting a movie called George of the Jungle 2 for
Right.
Disney. And our producer, Greg Hoffman, he was talking to me and he was telling me about his next project. And he's like, it's this horror film. I don't know. And he's like, it's low budget horror. I don't know what it's going to turn into. Right. And I was like, well, Greg, I want to be in it. And he was like, I don't know. He's like, it's really dark, twisted horror. I don't know, Julie. He goes, I don't even know how it's gonna turn out. Well, that was Saw.
Wow.
That was the first Saw. So then I think it was during Saw 2 or Saw 3. He had a heart attack and he passed away. And so when I got offered Saw 5, I felt like it was Greg going like, okay, girl, you wanted to be in this. But at that point, I had seen the first Saw and it fucked me up big time. Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It fucked me up too.
Yeah, it fucked me. I find the Saw movies psychologically terrifying.
Yeah.
And they just terrify you on a. It's not like a typical horror film. It damages you.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Right.
I never watched them after. So I thought to myself too, wow, this is going to be a challenge being in a movie that really creeps me out. That puppet, I can't with the puppet. I can't. Okay. So when I was on set, my first day, our first scene up was the scene with the collars around our neck and the thing that chops your head off. And the set design is incredible. It's so real. Like it just feels so real when you're in it. And I remember it was a heavy choreographed scene. They had these guys behind the thing pulling the pulleys, and it was heavily choreographed. Who was moving forward when, who was, to make it look like we were all connected. We rehearsed. We all felt great. We were ready to shoot. And right before they went to roll cameras, I had freaked out and I said to David Haffel, the director, I said, wait a second. What's going to happen if I don't get to the key first? And he looked at me. He's like, well, cut. He's like, it's not real. Like, oh my God.
It really got to you.
It did. And I was there for 2 weeks filming and I had nightmares the whole time. And the crew was like, oh yeah, that'll happen to us during the first one. They're like, welcome to Saw. This is what happens on your first one. And when we got to that last scene with the spaghetti hand, that's what I call it, the spaghetti arm, I actually threw up on set during rehearsal because it was so. I knew my hand wasn't being cut off, but it looked like it in that thing, and I freaked out and I got sick and like threw up on. Like I was just like it was awful, but it was good for me to see if I could be in something that is so scary. Now I've never watched it. That's the one movie of mine I have not. I can't.
Yeah.
I can't.
It sounds like a very immersive experience.
It is. It really is. And in Saw 5, that scene where that guy's head is in the box and it fills up with water. I mean, he did that for real. That is not CGI. He did that for real. They had paramedics there just in case. Like and I was in hair and makeup at that time. And I couldn't even go watch it because just the idea of it, like a lot of people went to watch him shoot it. And I was like, I'm having a panic attack sitting in the makeup chair knowing I'm here.
Right.
Like in the studio, knowing this scene's being shot. Like kudos to him for doing it. I couldn't have done that. That was intense.
That sounds like your worst nightmare. You already mentioned you don't like water, and then that's the worst case.
Yeah, you're never gonna see me in Titanic 2,
The crazy thing is him being in his head in that box wasn't even the worst thing that happened to him in that movie. Oof. We're
I know, but he was a good. I mean, he tried everything. He did everything. He was good.
That's awesome.
I love Peter Strahm. Were you ever contacted for Saw 3D? You know, they had in that movie they had like survivors of Jigsaw's games doing the like the meetings together. Did you ever get contacted about? I'm just
I did.
curious.
No, I didn't, and I was bummed because I was one of the few survivors. So
Right.
I was kind of bummed that I wasn't. But I think maybe they thought they emotionally damaged me so much that
Because I think the guy you were in the final game with was in that like the meeting assembly. I think he was there.
yeah, yeah. And I worked with one of the producers on another movie. So I thought for sure, like, but they never asked me to come back. So
Yeah, they probably thought you were too traumatized. Like we don't need to put her through this again.
it was a really traumatizing experience. I had my dog Bamboo, who has since passed away, but he was a puppy then, and they would put him in the traps and take pictures of him to make me laugh. And like he would like the blood from the when the girl got her head chopped off, that's like just like corn syrup or whatever with food coloring. And so like little Bamboo was like they took pictures of him like licking at the head and like to try to make me laugh. And but yeah, it was definitely a traumatic experience. But I loved it. I mean, listen, it's an amazing franchise. Just because it terrifies me does not negate what it just that's how good it is. Like
hmm
that's how good it is. And it's the longest running, most successful horror franchise I think in history. Am I correct?
I believe it.
It's one of them for sure.
Yeah, off the top of my head, probably about right.
So it's absolutely incredible. It's just little me is a little scaredy cat.
And this is the last question I'm going to ask, and we'll get off of it. I don't want you to be too traumatized. But
It's
you know,
okay.
like I mentioned earlier, me and Brian, we met you at Spooky Empire in October,
Yes.
and I remember talking to you a little bit about Billy the puppet. Then I showed you my phone, and you were still scared. Have you been able to overcome that yet? It doesn't sound like it, but does that doll
No.
still haunt you?
That doll haunts me, and that doll shows up sometimes at conventions, and people love to bring it by me because I immediately like,
I've got one, but I won't.
no, I don't, please don't.
So
No, there's something so creepy about that pup. I mean, listen, uh, so the director of Saw 5 was David Hackle, and I think he was the set designer for all the previous Saws. I mean, just such incredible talent and team. Like they really, sorry, my dog's coming up here. um, they really know they know what they're doing. Like they are experts at like giving you nightmares.
yeah, it's a traumatizing franchise for sure. So sticking in horror and movies that we would review on our show, one that I plan on picking is a horror comedy. Shriek If
Oh
You Know What I
God.
Did last Friday the 13th. That's such a wildly absurd movie that always makes me laugh. How in the world did that role come about?
How does that movie make you laugh? I feel like I need to give you your money back.
No. I think it's funny
I
too. I used
mean,
to rent it.
okay, I'll give you $6 each.
No.
Um, so I mean, I auditioned for it, and that was done at the same time. What's the other horror comedy
Scary
movie
movie.
that did
Scary
much?
movie.
Yeah, that was done at the same time as that. So, um, they were literally shot at the same time in Los Angeles.
Oh wow.
So I feel like I got into the wrong one. But whatever. We'll make the best of it. It was a fun cast. Danny Strong was in it, who is now a big prolific writer. But Danny would come to my trailer every day and we'd drink like one of those emergency powder things, and we would just be like, what the fuck is this movie we're doing? Because the director came from Mad TV, and so he was used to shooting sketches. he I swear to God, he couldn't think more than 3 lines at a time. And it's really hard to do comedy when you're just shooting like 3 lines at a time. Like it's hard to get a flow.
Right.
So Danny and I were just like, what are we doing here? and we tried to make the best of it. I think my favorite moment on set was when Tom Arnold was like, we were all waiting on set for Tom Arnold to get out of his trailer, and Tiffany Thiessen was there, and she was like, fuck this shit. And she walked, and you could hear her go, Tom, get your ass out of the trailer. We're all waiting for you on set.
Nice.
I was like, you go, girl. And then I think my other favorite part, I mean, I did get to do a Mentos commercial, which was kind of fun. And the Kielbasa Queen crown, wearing the crown
Yes.
of sausages was
Yeah.
a lot of fun. But it was, I think we realized while we were filming it that there's a lot of problems with that movie, but we had a lot of fun.
There is. I mean, it came out when I was in 7th or 8th grade, so it was like
Oh God.
that perfect
Same.
humor
Yeah.
for a teenage
Yeah,
boy,
it
you know. So that's why
Yeah.
it still makes me laugh.
It does me too.
So 2 more projects that I want to ask you about. They're both from 1996 because both of these are near and dear to my heart. You're in an episode of one of my favorite childhood shows, Boy Meets World, and you had an uncredited role in a Chris Farley movie, classic movie, Black Sheep. Any fun stories you can tell us about either of those?
So with Black Sheep, I shot actually a week and a half on the movie. I was supposed to be playing oh God, what's his name? The other, David Spade. I was supposed to be playing David Spade's love interest.
Oh.
And who also turned out to be Gary Busey's daughter in the movie. And so I worked for like a week and a half on that film, and was devastated to find out when they put the edit together that they cut me out of it. But Penelope Spheris was nice enough to edit the scenes together and send them to me because I needed them for my reel. And, you know, I remember David even called me to explain it had nothing to do with my performance or anything, but everything to do with the way they were telling the story. And I do remember I never met Gary Busey, even though I did scenes with him, because he just didn't show up to work that day. So I worked with a double. Yeah. That's movie magic making. So yeah, and then but I had a great time working. I mean, David was really lovely to me and very kind, and so was Chris, and they were just really nice people, and they were a lot of fun to work with. But you know, the sad thing was I got edited out. And then Boy Meets World. No, that was, I mean, it's really hard to remember those years because
Right.
I'm really old now. I just remember having fun on the show. And I remember I wore like did I wear like a green sweater? I think, and my hair was kind of, but I don't remember what I did. Something, I was the popular girl at school or something. I don't know. Because I also did Step by Step, and they all kind of run together for me those years, because I just was, you know, I was literally bouncing from guest star to guest star to guest star, and working on so many different shows at that time that it just all runs together. But everybody was really nice, is what I remember. So
awesome.
Well, given what we know now about Gary Busey, that kind of doesn't surprise me like at all.
Oh, of course not. No, and I think that was in like, you know.
Yeah, the heyday.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so shifting gears a little bit, we saw you have an upcoming project called The Midway Point, where you played the lead, Miss Devaney, if that's correct. Can you tell us about that?
So it's a sweet little film. It's written and directed by, I mean, I think he was 19 or 20 years old. He's a kid who, he's on the spectrum, and he wrote this little script about the first time he fell in love. And he somehow got it produced. It's a tiny, tiny little small budget film, but very sweet film. And I play his guidance counselor, who I try to help him navigate his emotions and feelings. And Thor Birch is in it as well. So
shout out to Hocus Pocus.
Yeah.
One of my favorites. I love that movie.
I met her I didn't have any scenes with, well, I did have scenes. I had 2 scenes with her. And when I met her on set, I was just like, this is such a big fan. It's so great to meet you.
I love that. Miss Julie, we really appreciate your time. We're getting ready to wrap up. I got to ask you one question that we always ask our guests. We started when we had Lisa Wilcox on, another Spooky Empire attendee who I got to meet. I see, like, I follow you on Instagram. I see you do a lot of conventions. You're all over the country, it seems like. What are some of your favorite convention moments you've ever had? And another thing I want to ask is, what city do you think has the best food that you've been to, like convention-wise?
Oh, wow. My favorite moments at conventions, because I've been a part of the Buffy Angel world for a long time. I have had the opportunity to meet fans that have met other attendees, fallen in love, gotten married, and have kids, and meet their kids, and like, you know what I mean?
Wow.
And then recently I was at the Niagara Falls Comic Con, and this woman and her grown daughter came up to me, and the woman showed me a picture of me holding the daughter when she was a baby at a
Wow.
convention, and now she's like 17, and so I just think that's really kind of cool. But I think the coolest part about when you're on a show like a Buffy Angel, like a Dexter, and there's a big global community that surrounds it, where people are just as passionate about the show as we were making it. It's just the coolest thing in the world, and it just really, I don't know, it's just a really cool thing to be a part of, and a lot also at conventions, what attendees don't realize is, like, I just came back from Orlando from Fanboy Expo, and we did a Buffy Angel reunion, and after our hours on the floor, we all go to dinner and catch up and hang out, and it's a reunion for us too as cast members. So and especially with Buffy and Angel, because we were all like, I mean, we were in our 20s, some of us even younger when we shot that show, and now I'm in my 50s. It's it's You just feel like you can be so authentic with these people and really be yourself, because they knew you when you were young, and and it's just a great part. It's a great to be a part of. And like, Claire Kramer and Charisma Carpenter, we're still really good friends. I was just on the phone with Charisma actually before hopping on this podcast. I was just FaceTiming with her. And Emma Caulfield, and like Amy Acker. It's just like, and yes, we all live in, well, most of us live in LA. So sometimes it's hard because they all have kids and we all have busy lives, and it's hard to get together. So conventions is an opportunity for us to get together and hang out and spend some quality time with each other as well. So it's a twofer. We get a twofer at conventions. So we get to meet great fans and have these great fan experiences, and then see these babies grow up into full humans. And then we also get to catch up with each other and spend some quality time with each other.
That's awesome. So I got to ask,
it.
you said you were at Fanboy in Orlando. You weren't at Fanboy in Knoxville, were you?
No, but they want
Okay.
us to go to Knoxville.
So that's where I'm at. So I was going to be mad if I
Okay.
missed you. So I'll have to swing by if you make it.
There's talk about them doing the same reunion show at Fanboy Expo, so in
That'd be awesome.
Knoxville. So I hope
Yeah.
so. And what food convention wise? What city convention wise has the best food?
No, just like, what city do you think has
What
the
city?
best food? Since you travel so much.
I'm gonna say LA. I'm sorry, Los Angeles, where I live.
There you go.
Okay.
It really does. I mean, we have everything here.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from, it's still hard to find good Chinese food here. Like that is something that we like. Really good Chinese food, I think, lacks, or I haven't found it yet. But we have access to all different. The food here is so good, and the restaurants will accommodate like every allergy, every, whereas like, I was filming in New Orleans once, and I remember ordering room service, and I was like, "Can I just get some steamed vegetables?" And they're like, "Steamed? What's that?" I was like, "One is steamed, no butter." She's like, "No butter? What do you mean no butter? You can't have vegetables without butter." I was like, "Yeah, you can."
We put butter on everything down here.
Yeah,
That's
the
right.
woman on the phone was like, "You're crazy. What do you mean you don't want butter?" I was like, "I don't want butter." Then I had to say, I told her, I was like, "Listen, I'm allergic to butter." "I'm not." She's like, "Allergic to butter?" I was like, "Yeah, it makes me fat." I'm like, "It clogs my arteries. It makes me fat." She was like, "Never heard of that." Like, okay. I was like, "Well, I'm severely allergic to butter, so please don't put butter on any of my food. Thank you."
That's awesome.
So she was
That-
just shocked. I've never had anybody order vegetables with no butter.
yeah, that's sacrilege in the South. No butter.
I know.
Before we let you go, is there anything else you have in the works that you'd like to plug? You want to shout out social media, anything like that?
Oh, I'm very active on Instagram. I used to be active on TikTok until I forgot my password and then gave it up. But I gained a lot of hours in my life for forgetting my password, because TikTok is
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
time
trap.
suck. Yeah. So on Instagram, I'm Julie Benz MFT, which stands for My Favorite Things, Not Marriage Family Therapist. However, if you want to ask me relationship advice, feel free.
Awesome.
But yeah, check me out on Instagram, and yeah, that's it.
All right. Well, we thank you again for joining us.